Hello and welcome to another episode of Educational. This is Roy.
I'm Terry.
So we are a podcast that we are going to chronicle our journey. Of course, we both have aging parents, and unfortunately, Terry has lost her dad. He to Alzheimer's a few years ago. So she's been through that struggle and journey, and then. From time to time, we are going to bring professionals on, and we're very fortunate enough today that Charisma Freeman has joined us. She is the founder of Charisma's Care Coaching and Charisma Care, and she has 15 years of medical experience as a registered nurse, an adult geriatric nurse practitioner, disability advocate, special needs mom, educator, medical curriculum developer, certified life and wellness coach, and she's been featured on 11 Alive News and Good Morning America and Focus. So, Charisma, thanks for taking time out of your day to be with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we are excited to talk to you. We've just launched, so we have a one episode that is out, but we're excited to bring this message. We know that a lot of people, a lot of families struggle as loved ones age, and then of course there's some of us that are aging as well. So we want to try to see what we can do for ourselves as much, but that the caregiver is in a very unique position because typically, if I'm not mistaken, it's usually the daughter-in-law that gets to carry the heavy load of caregiving for everybody. And then so not only does it make it hard on them, but a lot of times they have to leave employment. The caregiver does. They have to leave employment, so there's a financial burden. But then also with our truly sickest individuals that we care for, I think the numbers are staggering that 70 to 80% of caregivers will actually pass before the person that they're caring for. So it's a tough spot to be in. And so we're fortunate enough to talk to you, and you've got a lot of great experience to kind of, give us some tips to help us through this journey.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, can you
Um,
tell us? Go ahead.
it is unfortunate that a lot of us caregivers do end up passing before our loved ones, the ones that we're taking care
Yeah.
of.
It's just so important all around, just for you to take care of yourself, but especially if you're a caregiver. That's the best way that you can give care is to take care of yourself. So you have some great tools to do that. Can you talk about what led you to come out with Charisma's Care, and your personal journey? And I know it's a lot, but your personal journey as well as your professional journey, and how you kind of merged them together to do this.
Yeah, of course. So I began my life as a caregiver, I would say pretty young, probably as a child. My grandmother, like a lot of our parents and grandparents, had arthritis in her knees. And, I would sit with her and I would be sent to go get the witch hazel out the out the cabinet. That was before, I think that was before even icy hot. I think they just had the blue rub at that
Oh.
point. So I would be sent to go get the witch hazel, and I would rub it on her knee and I would tell her, Grandma, when I grow up, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to be a nurse, or I'm going to be a doctor.
Mm.
And a lot of times, a lot of us say those things when we're younger, but I actually did that. I did just that. Right after high school, I went straight into college, into nursing school. And over the years, when I initially went in, I thought I was going to be a nurse midwife and deliver babies, until my first experience delivering babies.
Oh.
It
That would
was,
do it.
yeah, it was not as glorious as I thought it would be. And over the years, I gravitated towards actually hospice, and I worked in the hospice
Okay.
industry. And
Wow.
mhm.
Yeah, I gotta hand it to you there.
Oh
That
my
is, I
gosh.
don't know a lot about it. I do know enough to know that that is an emotional. It's just an emotional stress of a job, because I know we get attached to the people that we care for, and then hospice, unfortunately, they are typically at the end of their life, and so they're not with us that long.
Right, right.
Yeah.
I tell people hospice as a nurse is more of a spiritual journey. You're not just treating the physical, you're treating the spiritual part of a person, you're treating their physical, you're treating their mental and emotional, but more than anything else, you're treating their family.
Right. Right.
Yes.
That's a bigger part of it.
Yeah, I guess that providing that comfort to the family is definitely a big part of that job. I never really thought about that.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah, my grandfather was in it. He ended up going to a hospice care facility, and oh my gosh, they were amazing. They were just amazing there. They had it together. We were all falling apart at different times, and they had it together, and they just led us through the steps.
Yeah,
And it had to have been hard for them.
yeah,
Yeah, and the other thing I know about hospice is that we typically tend to fight that off because the stigma attached around it is that the end is near if you're going on hospice. So, uh, but I think that it could provide a lot of comfort to the families, but also ease the suffering of the patients themselves. To as soon as your doctor recommends it, is to just embrace it and you know try to get into it if you can.
yeah. What I actually found, I worked in all different divisions of hospice. I was the hospice nurse for many, many years. I worked as an admission nurse. I've worked in the hospital for it. And what I found is that really we don't refer our patients and our people to hospice soon enough. What we do is we wait to the very end when the person is in agony, the pain can no longer be controlled. They're extremely agitated, especially our dementia patients. By that time, they're just extremely agitated. It's so hard to get a handle on it. Instead of referring them a little bit earlier, because hospice is typically sick, they say 6 months or less. But sometimes we have patients that's on hospice for a year or so. But if we can get them on there earlier and we can start managing those symptoms, because it's more about symptom management. So if we can start managing those symptoms before mom loses 20 pounds, if we can get her when she lost those first 10 pounds, or when her appetite is starting to decrease, those things make a big difference. You treat the person, you're not treating the diagnosis in hospice, and that's what is
Right.
so different from our typical medical profession.
Yeah. Yeah, and talking about that, getting in and treating their symptoms, we can, if I'm not mistaken, we can actually give a little bit more quality time for family members with their loved ones than, like you said, maybe that they're suffering and they keep fighting against whatever the struggle is. And that in itself can take a huge toll, not only on the patient, but on the family.
Yeah, it's definitely quality of life versus quantity of life. And actually, what studies have found is that patients on hospice care actually live longer than patients that are not on hospice care because they are receiving that regular care. I tell people, first of all, you've already paid for the hospice service. Through when you get it through
Right.
Medicare, you already paid for it, regardless of if you knew it or not. So you pay for the
Right.
nurse, the CNA, the social worker, the chaplain, the ability to do respite care, continuous
Yeah.
care. You've paid for it, so why not take advantage of all of these services that are available to you at the end of life? Because we all know that
Yeah.
if it's nothing else that's promised, that it's the end of life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and there's a lot of what I guess is called durable medical equipment that can come along with hospice to make life easier. Well, I know, like hospital beds and
Oh
just other
yeah.
equipment that you can take advantage of to help make it easier on everybody as well.
Yep, the overbed table, the high commode for the patient. We do specialty mattresses if their wounds are bad enough. Wheelchairs, all of those different things that you're searching
Yeah,
for. It's all covered under that one hospice benefit.
yeah. So the other thing that was interesting, I thought, is that, you provide coaching to caregivers. And I mean, this could be at any point in time, but, probably even just the sooner that people can get to you, the better off they will be, if they're starting to have to provide more and more care to family members, because it's so involved and there's so many things that we don't think about. But, like checking mail, trip and fall hazards, and just, again, we'll get back to the self-care of the caregiver themselves, is that sometimes they need the respite care and get somebody in to help them, even if it's just for a few days or a few hours.
Yeah, and what I found over the course of my career, once I got into geriatrics, and I just really loved it. But what I found is that a lot of time the caregivers, they weren't taking care of themselves at all. They weren't making their doctor's appointments. They weren't managing their blood pressure. They weren't taking medications for anxiety, and their anxiety was going through the roof. I would see them. I do a lot of in-home visits. Even now, I visit my patients in the home. And most of the time, the caregivers say, "When was the last time you ate?" "Oh, I don't know. Maybe I had a Snickers bar." When's the last
Right.
time you had a fruit or a vegetable? When, do you stop to go to the bathroom? When was the last time you had a moment for yourself to just woo-sigh and
Yeah.
breathe?
Yeah.
And they don't think about that.
Yeah. Well, and I think the message, and Terry alluded to this earlier, is what you have to realize as a caregiver is you want to be there to provide care for your loved one. We know that, but you have to think about it's usually a marathon, not a sprint, and so you have to think about, if I may be here in the short run, but if I don't take care of myself, I'm not going to be here in the long run. And then who is going to take care of my loved one?
Right. Right. And that's definitely a question I ask people. If you were to fall ill and end up in the hospital tomorrow, what would happen to mom, dad, grandma, grandpa? What would
Yeah.
happen to them? Where would they go? Because we don't consider that, and we don't take the time to take care of ourselves, especially the
Yep.
natural caregivers. And you're normally the only person providing that care.
Yep. Yeah, and if you happen to
Yeah.
be a mom or a grandmother, then now you have passed the caregiving torch to your children, and now they're not only caring for you, but they're caring for the loved one that you were caring for too. So we've just doubled down on that.
Yep, the sandwich generation.
Yeah.
That, exactly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Exactly. And I mean, I know I'm guilty of it. I can recognize it, sit back and recognize it now, speaking with you, especially that how important it is, to take care of myself so I can make sure, my mom's 80, 86, 87, 86. And she was in the hospital over in the fall she was in ICU for a week, and then in the hospital for a week, and then physical therapy and occupational therapy, all that stuff. We were just going. We were just going, and we actually kind of had a plan. She's healthy, so this was just something that came up
Mhm.
where she ended up getting sepsis and all of that. But we just kept going, going, going. And I fortunately, my sister's close by, so she was able to help. But it's easy to say, but it's so much harder to
Do.
do.
Yeah.
I,
Well, because people like Terry, she would go over to her mom's in the evening and stay all evening, stay up overnight, and then come home and try to have a normal life during the day. And
Yeah.
Come
after
home and want to sleep.
after a few days, it was just not much more. And so, one thing that we could talk about, I think here's a good transition, is planning. We never want to talk about somebody getting ill, but I think what I have found in my experience is, because of lack of planning, there's a crisis happens, and then everybody is in panic mode trying to solve it, instead of, there are things that we can talk about pre-crisis that will help. And I'll let you be the expert here and talk about that. But I think it goes from not only uh, providers that we use, what kind of medication are you on, because the night that they went to the emergency room, Terry had a whole bag full of medicine sitting in the emergency room trying to catalog all the different prescriptions. And so, to me, those are things that we could do pre-crisis. Also, she's fortunate enough, she has two sisters that they get along well, and we're able to coordinate the care. But there can be dialogue about, well, if something happens, who's going to do what and how do we work this out?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the things that I offer on my website, charismascare.com, is I offer a free packet of information. I call it your care coach guide, caregiver's guide. And what that does is it documents all of those things you just mentioned. It documents who's the first and second emergency contact, the medications that your loved one is on, dosages, all of those things, diagnosis. I have a list of the most common, like 50 diagnoses.
Yeah.
So it's checkbox and some, fill in the blank. I also add on there, do you have a living will? Who's your power of attorney? Any specialist that you see, all of those things. You can either save it on your phone or you can download it and have a paper form of it. And that way you have it with you. And when I work with clients, what I do is, I basically fall under Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So basically, Maslow's hierarchy says we have to take care of the basics: food, shelter, and water. Until we can take care of the basics, I can't tell you to let's go do yoga 30 minutes a day, 3 times a week, because you're looking at me like I'm a crazy lady.
Right. Yeah.
So we need to make sure you're eating, you're sleeping, and mom and dad are taken care of. So
Right.
if you have, that's what makes me different than your average coach, is that I like to kind of focus on the medical portion of it first to make sure they're comfortable, answer any questions you have about that, tell you how you can have that dialogue with your physician, or how you create your team, all of those different things. And then once we can figure all of that out, then from there we can start to build up and focus more in on you as the caregiver.
Yeah. You bring up a good point about the powers of attorneys, not necessarily a will, because that'll be after the fact, but the power of attorney, living wills and directives and all that. Uh, Somebody needs to know where those are because,
Yes.
Right.
because I know a lot of people that take the time to have all of that, and then a catastrophe happens and then nobody can find them, or if they even know they exist, they don't know where they are. So again, good to let somebody know where it's at. But you know I don't even know, maybe there's a good spot to write down for somebody, that you can it will trigger somebody, but definitely need to know where to go
And
find this.
Yeah.
updated
Nope.
information as well.
Exactly. Know where they are. Make sure it's been updated, not 20 years ago. Make sure it's been updated and have that conversation. A lot of people don't want to have that conversation. But, I worked in the ICU and it was always so difficult when we had the family. There's 5 different siblings. Only one of them actually took care of mom. Nobody actually knew what mom wanted but the one sibling, and all the other ones were against her. If it's written
Right.
down, then we simply pick up the paper and say, well, mom said she doesn't want to be on life support.
Right.
There we have
The
it.
family dynamics really, oh my gosh, they really come into play when you're talking about the parents, because everybody thinks, each child thinks they know what that parent wants.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. And it
Yep.
happens a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I was a I relate this story all the time, but I was a volunteer long-term care ombudsman in the state of Texas for a while. And so when I first started that, I thought we were there to protect residents from the big bad communities and corporate providers. But what I quickly found out was we were there to protect them from their relatives and other family
It's
members.
so sad.
It's that they were the most destructive. That people don't realize it, but we have to put restraining orders on family members, because we had a lady that would aspirate anytime that she had solid food. And so there was one sister that she would come over and take her out to the all-you-could-eat buffet, and then she'd be sick for 3 days because she was, coughing and choking up everything. Anyway, that's kind of graphic, I know. But the thing is it gets back to, if mom or dad, or if we as individuals write down and document what we want, then there's no question, and we don't have to try to determine who's the best mind reader in the family that really knows what mom and dad wants.
Yeah, and that goes for spouses as well, because the other caregiver that we find that is forgotten are the spouses. There are a lot of spousal caregivers out there too. And they need to have that same conversation. Both of them should do I tell people, oh, you're going to celebrate, go out to dinner, take this power of attorney and go ahead and do that while you're waiting on your meal to come to the table. Yeah.
Valentine's Day.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do it together, make it a special occasion, and then we're done with it.
Yeah, that's good. One other thing I wrote down while y'all were talking earlier is polypharmacy. I know that can be have a huge impact for older adults, because they have different doctors, and unfortunately sometimes they may seek out a doctor that tells them what they want to hear. So they may have gone to 4 or 5 people. But anyway, do you see that is a big problem? Because my impression is that when you get a prescription, the pharmacist should be looking at all that. But what I've found is that they don't always pick it up. So do you see that as a big problem, or do you run into that a lot?
Yes, especially with my elderly population, polypharmacy is a very big problem. So on the packet that I told you about, I do have them list the medications, but I also have a list of herbal supplements, because you will be amazed how many herbal supplements people are on. And that is part of our polypharmacy, because those herbal supplements also interact with those medications. I also have them list their specialists, because of course, in a perfect world, all the practitioners, all the doctors, all the specialists are talking, but they're really not in our world. They're really not talking.
Right.
The use of the my chart and the medical documentation has helped, and it helps with pharmacists to see it, but you're still on so many medications. One person is giving you metformin for diabetes, and then the other person is finding that your kidneys are failing, so they're taking you off the metformin and putting you on something else, but your doctor didn't know that, so now your diabetes is out of control because they need to put you on something else. So it's really a matter of gathering everything. So that's why you really need to, only use one pharmacy, please. If you use one pharmacy, you are more likely not to have the issues with your medications interacting, because that pharmacist will know what's going on. And to either write down all of those medications and herbal supplements and the essential oils, because that has come into play now too. So write all of that down, or brown bag it, like we say, put it all in a brown bag, bring it to your doctor and sit it on the table so they can just write them all out.
Yeah. And you might, if you don't mind, I just jumped into that without explaining what polypharmacy is. So would you mind just a simple explanation for the audience there?
Basically, polypharmacy is when you have more than 3 or 4 medications. So when you start to have different ones, they all have different interactions. So we need to make sure that they're not causing different effects and different reactions in the body.
Yeah.
And I mentioned metformin because that's a big one.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So what are some other tips what are some other things that you can think about that we need to, be sure and remind caregivers that they need to take into consideration?
So when you're going to the doctor, make sure you have your list of questions. I actually put a little spot on there too. Write down those questions before, because when I worked in the clinic, I literally had 5 or 10 minutes to see you. That's why clinic life wasn't for me. But my MA goes in there for the first 15 minutes. She gets your information from you. By the time I get in there, I'm literally just there for what you said you came for. If you're lucky, I can focus on 3 things, but most of the time I can only focus on 1 or 2. So if you have questions, I really need you to know them and just fire them off. So write down, those questions ahead of time and make sure you ask the person so that you're not like, oh man, once you walk out, oh, I forgot to ask her about this, or mom fell and this happened, or man, I forgot, we needed an order for that x-ray. So just make sure you write that down ahead of time.
Yeah, I do that. I mean, I've just now started writing out questions because I'm so overwhelmed in all aspects of my life that when I go to the doctor, it's like, hey, I get there and he tells me, he tells me what's going on, and then I leave and I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
What about that and that and that?
And make sure you let them know.
Yeah, and the other thing is,
about what?
About anything new. If there's been a fall, injury, I encounter patients all the time when I come see them in the home. They're like, oh yeah. I'm like, where's that bruise from? Oh, mom fell and hit her knee and she couldn't walk for a couple of days. I said, well, did you let your doctor know? Well, no. When was the last time you saw your doctor? Yesterday.
Yes. We had to go through mom's apartment and take it when she did physical therapy and occupational therapy. They would come in and she had all these throw rugs.
Yes.
I hate a throw rug.
Throw rugs.
I hate a throw rug. We had to take them all up.
Yes.
We hid them.
Please take away the throw rugs.
Oh.
That the fall in itself may not be bad, but I think a lot of times we don't realize the implications because, one thing I say is a lot of times people don't want to go where they can get a little more assistance because they think that they want to retain their independence. But when you fall, you break a hip and you don't recover, now you've totally lost any and all independence. And then unfortunately, sometimes that can be the trigger for pneumonia, and then things just go downhill from there.
Yeah, it's been very often where I will have a patient that's fallen, and then that will be their downward spiral to the end, and it definitely happens.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's so important to get out in front of that for sure. The other thing I think that it's good to realize that you really have a right to ask questions. So if somebody is putting you off or not answering them fully, and I realize that, doctors are crushed for time because they have a lot of appointments and they're moving through, but at the very least, they should try to answer your questions, or sometimes you can email the office and get answers, but don't ever hesitate or feel like that you cannot ask questions.
Yeah. Yeah. And I tell patients, if you feel like you have a doctor and it's that person, you all just don't get along, or they're just not the person for you, know that it's okay to look for other doctors. There's a multitude of doctors out there. Your insurance covers 99.9% of them. Even if you've been with this doctor for 15 years, sometimes it may be necessary to see another doctor. And in that same token, it's okay to get a second opinion. Sometimes we welcome a second opinion, because you may need that. That second opinion may save your loved one's life. So definitely make sure you do that.
Yeah, my mom, I keep going back to my mom. Well, that's my reference. About 5 years ago, maybe, she was diagnosed. She had a fall and was in the hospital. And one of the doctors there diagnosed her with Parkinson's disease because she had some little tremors. So for about 6 months, she was on some medication. I can't remember what it was called, but whatever it is for Parkinson's.
Yeah.
And they gave her symptoms. I mean, the side effects of the medication gave her more symptoms of Parkinson's. We went to like 3 or 4 doctors and found one. He was like, he said, okay, just stare straight ahead. I'm going behind it. And he kind of pulled her shoulders a little bit. And he's like, You do not have Parkinson's, and I'm going to show you why. I mean, weaned her off of it, nothing. You know, she has a little bit of shake, but not anything like it was just really frustrating after the fact, but so thankful that somebody found it.
Right, right. Yeah. I couldn't
Yeah,
imagine.
yeah, no, we've grown up respecting the medical profession and doctors, but
And
you know,
not
I think,
questioning.
yeah, not questioning and are being, being timid to ask a question or, make them think we are questioning them. So it's good. And I think that most, I don't know how to say it, but most good doctors will welcome that second opinion, or they will
Right,
understand why you feel like you need more information. They will not make you feel bad.
right.
So, don't hesitate to do that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely necessary. And like you said, most doctors, if they're a good doctor, they don't mind you getting that second opinion. Not at all.
Right. Right. All right. Well, we appreciate you taking time out of your day. The other thing I was going to mention is you do offer an essential skills training course. So, number one, I'll let you in a minute. You can tell us where we can go find that. But I think, people need to reach out and get some information from you. And then there's also this training course that would be good. But before we get to all that, I was going to ask you, what is a tool or a habit or a ritual? What's something that you do in your everyday life that just it adds value for you?
Well, for me, I am a caregiver as well. My son has special needs. So, in addition to managing my business, and I still see patients and managing him and my daughter, I am a big fan of my Google Calendar. If I did not
Okay.
if I did not have my Google Calendar on the phone, I don't know what I would do. I send whenever we have something going on and someone has to be invited, I put their name into the Google Calendar for my daughter. If we have a doctor's appointment, I put her email in and she knows she has an appointment. Things are color coded on there. For my daughter, it's one color. For
Nice.
doctor's appointments, those are always in red. So I know that those are the doctor's appointments. If they're little things, they're
Okay.
in a different color. So I make sure, and everybody knows if you're not in my calendar, you're not getting done. My daughter will put things in my calendar to make sure that it's
Yeah.
done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's important. And the good thing about the Google Calendar is it goes across all your devices where it's not just one thing that's on your phone, but it'll go across your devices. And like you said, you can share it where other trusted people can put stuff on and put appointments on there as well. Yeah, trust. I want to emphasize that.
Kids might want to put
Yes.
pizza in there every once in a while.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
right.
But I mean, one thing that I found with the Google Calendar, if you use it long term, sometimes I can look, if I'm at an appointment, I can look back and they'll say, well, when was that surgery? And I can look back 2 years ago because I'm like, I think it's around April. I can slide back 2 years ago in April and say, oh, it was April 15th.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Mhm. Yep.
All right. Well, thanks for that. So, if you don't mind, tell us, number one, who is your client, what you can do for them, and then, of course, how they can reach out and get a hold of you. But also, you may want to talk a little bit about this essential skills training course that you've got.
So the Essential Skills Training course, it's for the family caregiver. And what it does is it's a pre-recorded course where I go through about 10 modules and we discuss things like feeding, we discuss transfers, bathing, we discuss medication management. And the reason why I created it, someone actually asked me for it because they were going through caregivers, especially during COVID. And whenever they would hire a caregiver, the expectation would be that the caregiver was already trained. But rarely are the caregivers that we're hiring already trained. Whether we hire them directly or we hire them from a company, we find that they come in here and they don't know what to do. So I created the training for that caregiver, or if your family member is going to respite, or you're bringing in a family member that's not typically here. They can take that training. It has questions at the end if you want them to, do the questions, and they can take this training. It goes through all of these different modules. And then at that point, the only thing you really have to update them on are things that are very specific to your loved one. So you're not repeating the same thing over and over and over. And you know that everybody knows all of the same information. So that's why I created that.
Yeah, no, that's a good
That
point
is really good.
because everybody's a little different anyway, but it's good to just go through the specifics of your loved one and make sure, because a lot of people tell you that they care or have cared for other people and may not be totally truthful, or it may have been somebody that had a little different diagnosis that needed different types of care. So no, that's a good point to
Instead of just assuming that they have, because they have the caregiver
Exactly.
name, or that's what they're applying for, or whatever,
Mhm.
that they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
You have to know. Well, you can't assume that. You got to make sure.
Yep, and the CNAs are the same, because they may have worked with one client that didn't need any help with transfers, or didn't have any feeding issues or any tube feedings or anything of that nature. So this just levels the playing field and makes sure everyone's on the same page.
Yeah.
And now, as far as who my client is, my client are caregivers. So I found that the caregivers, they're not sleeping, they're not eating, they're not taking care of themselves. And I see that time and time again. And then they end up ill, they end up stressed out, they end up on all of these medications to help them manage this anxiety, stress, depression, help them. And nobody's leading them. Nobody's saying, okay, if we manage this part of your life, then that in turn will help you manage that stress and anxiety and all these things, and that caregiver breakdown that we sweep under the rug because nobody really looks at us caregivers. So that's why I created the coaching program. So I offer a coaching program. My first call is always free, so we sit down and I do it via Zoom or phone. It just depends on what your comfort level. We sit down, we talk about what's going on and where you are in your journey, and we can do coaching, or some people, we just do a call every so often where they just want to go over medications, medical jargon, just get an understanding of what's going on in their loved one's life. So I offer a little bit of both. In addition to the courses, and probably some group trainings in the future, because I've been asked a lot about doing some group trainings as well. But I just want people to have some help, because, like I said, I'm a caregiver. I cared for my grandmother until she actually passed away. She passed away in hospice as well. But I cared for her for thank you. I cared for her for years as well. And I mean, I always juggled so much, and there was really no one caring for me.
Right. Yeah, and I think the other component that's impressive about yourself is that you do have the nurse practitioner experience to go along with that caregiving experience. So that's
you're walking the walk.
Yeah.
You're not just talking.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great background. So how can people, and we will put this in the show notes, but how can people reach out and get a hold of you?
Okay, so my website is charismascare.com, and I make everything easy. Facebook is Charismas Care, Instagram is Charismas Care. So on Facebook, I do a Facebook Live every Friday at 10 to 10:30 a.m. And I talk about different topics. We talk about short-term disability and FMLA and how you can utilize that to care for your loved one. We talk about having the documentation and what you should have, and they'll in your documentation when you go to your doctor's office, and the documents you should request and the ones you can just toss. So all of those are on my Facebook. I'm working on getting it to my Instagram, but I do those every week, so they're on there for people to go take a look at. So I'm just always trying to educate the public, because this information shouldn't be hidden from us. It really should be in plain sight.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's a huge point that you make, because when crisis strikes, it's like trying to find the information. And the other thing too is like, if you've got a month or 6 weeks to search and Google and call people, you can find what you're looking for. But a lot of times, unfortunately, when you have that crisis mode, it's like, man, we need this information immediately, today, right now, because that tends to drive up the stress even more. Not only what event just happened, but not having all the correct information.
And sometimes you don't even know what information you need.
That's a good point. Yeah, we don't know what we don't know.
Where do you go?
Right. So that's what I put on there. And it prevents you from having to do extra tests and doing the same things over and over. And a lot of that stuff you can just request. You don't have to know where it is. They can just give it to you.
All right. Well, Charisma, we appreciate it. Y'all reach out to Charisma and go over to her Facebook page and watch some of these short videos. I know that they'll be very helpful, no matter where, what part of the journey you're in as a caregiver. Start earlier. Don't wait till you get yourself in crisis. Reach out and figure out how to be not only the best caregiver for your loved one, but the best caregiver for yourself as well. All right.
Thank you so much, Charisma. We really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, you're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you bet.
Doing good work.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for another episode of Educational. Again, you can find us at www.ageucational.com. We are on all the major podcast platforms: iTunes, Google, Stitcher, Spotify, and many more. If we're not on your favorite one, if you'll reach out to me, I'll be glad to try to get you added on. We are also on all the major social media platforms. Facebook, there's a Facebook group. We'd like to get some group chats going on there. Try to, put whatever questions you may have, put them out there. Somebody's been through or going through what you are. Try to reach out and help as many people as we can. Also, Twitter, Instagram, and the video of this interview. Once the episode goes live, this video will be up on YouTube for you to go to as well. So until next time, this is Roy.
It's Terry.
Thank you.
Thank you.